There's a heart piece of this that you have to get to the part of being where your heart knows it needs to be. And that's where the phrase, the rundown, came in. We were leaving lunch at a local restaurant here, and I just remember looking at Ira saying, man, listen, you're in a rundown between third and home. And at some point, you've got to decide which way you're going to go.
And Mike gave me the greatest trophy I've ever received. You know, it was not a loving cup and it was not a plaque. Okay. It was a game ball that Mike inspired and went out and presented. And the game ball said, biggest win of career.
Wow.
That was the day I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. And I'm emotional about it. I received a game ball for scoring the winning goal in a national championship game. I don't even know where it is, but the baseball that signified my accepting Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior is right smack dab in the family room in front of everyone to see, because that's how important it was.
Hey, welcome to Simple Faith. I'm your host, Rusty George. Hey, every now and then we have a guest that calls me back and says, hey, I've got a guest I'd like to bring on your show. And we always welcome that. Mike Linch has been a guest with us a few times. He's an incredible pastor, author, leads an incredible ministry for baseball players and coaches. And he happened to run across a guy over the last 20 years. They became friends. Mike began sharing his faith with this man. And after 20 years of this relationship, this individual who had everything in life discovered the thing he was missing was Jesus. He came home to Christ, and they've now written a book about their relationship and kind of walking into this spiritual journey and how his friend Ira found Christ. I think you're going to love this conversation, not only because of Ira's amazingly eclectic life, but also because of the way that God worked in his life over a long period of time. And I think maybe some of you out there listening have somebody in your life you're wondering, will they ever come to Christ? I think this will be an encouragement to you. I think you're going to want to share this with somebody, so make sure you pass this along and make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you're able to get fresh content every time it's delivered. And if you haven't checked this out on YouTube, do that as well so you can see all of the faces that make up this podcast. So here's my conversation with Mike Linch and Ira Blumenthal. Well, Mike, welcome back to the podcast, and Ira, welcome to here for the first time. Can you just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, Ira?
Well, I'd let Mike do that because he, I pay him to be my publicist. But that's always a tough question. Okay, and I sometimes answer it with, two different responses, one being who and one being what. On the what side, although I started my career out as a college coach, college football and lacrosse coach, I'm a business guy known for being a subject matter expert in the world of branding. We're the lead consultant to Coca-Cola for 27 years. Okay, had clients all around the world, including the people like McDonald's and others. So, been in the business world as a branding expert, mostly focused on the food industry. Concurrent to that, wrote a number of books, delivered almost 3,000 speeches on 5 continents, and on and on. I guess my short answer to you is there's a quote on the wall of my office: the true measure of a man is how many lives he can get in one lifetime. And I have a pretty complicated life story. That's kind of the what. The who is pretty simple. I'm an absolute obsessive, adoring husband, father, grandfather. My family is incredibly important to me, and I think I'm pretty good at that. I think I'm a pretty good dad and a pretty good granddad and a pretty good husband. And to me, there's not much more important other than Jesus Christ, obviously, than my family and my commitment to them. So don't know if it answered your question, but if you have another couple of hours, I'll show you slides. But
man, that's amazing.
Done a lot, been a lot.
Well, my first question off of that is, you've spoken on 5 continents. I'm assuming you have not on Antarctica. What's the other one you haven't been on?
Well, I haven't been to Asia.
Really? Okay.
That's a pretty big one. And, but if you'd asked me what my favorite one was, it wouldn't be North America. I'd tell you Australia, but, at the risk of sounding anti-American, I'm not. But it's been a real journey. I think the most fun was when I'd go to places that the audience was not English speaking, and I did concurrent translation. So they wear a headphone when I speak, and I wear a headphone when they ask questions. The crazy thing about it is, you tell a joke and they laugh like 10 seconds later. You're not really sure about how that works. Yeah, but it's been a real joy to me, from the standpoint of getting up in front of folks and attempting to educate and inspire them.
Tell me about your life in the business, or your business life in the restaurant industry. I'm curious about that because most of us only know it from the customer perspective. We go in there, we have an experience, we leave. You see the other side of things. What was that like?
Well, when you sit down at a restaurant, you order a chicken breast, it had to come from someplace. Probably came from, Springdale, Arkansas and Tyson Foods. But yeah, I was raised in the food industry, didn't want to go in the food industry. Obviously, like a lot of kids, if dad's a dentist, you don't want to be a dentist. But my dad, ironically enough, is considered one of the fathers of Chinese food in America. Now, let's think about that. His name is Larry Blumenthal. Okay, Jewish kid from Brooklyn, New York. The short version of the story is when he went World War II, and by the way, he was a minor league player for a team called the Brooklyn Dodgers, and he made an interesting decision in life. When he was traded to the Yankees, he told his mother, my grandmother, "I've got two choices: either play for the Yankees, and I hate the Yankees." Mm-hmm. Or join the Navy. He joined the Navy. He gave up baseball for the Navy. But my dad had a roommate named Fei Fang. They became best friends in Okinawa and Tinian, in World War II, the Navy. And when they came home, Fei said, "I want you to come." Oh, my dad said, I want you to come to my house and experience real Jewish cooking, And Fei said, "I want you to come to Chinatown." And my mom will do the same thing. My dad fell in love with the egg roll, the Chinese egg roll.
Wow.
He saw the egg roll as being the eaten hand. You have the taco, you have the hot dog, you have the, needless to say, the pizza. He thought that the next big eaten hand item was the egg roll. So he started a company with Fei Thong, which became one of the largest Chinese food companies in America. So I was raised in an industry. I was coaching college. I was offered a head coaching job at Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, to start a lacrosse program. The salary was somewhere between $17,000 and $18,000 a year. Okay, I turned to my dad for advice, and he said, if you went in the food business and got into sales, you probably start at $35,000 a year and get a Chevy Impala. I love coaching. But yeah, so the role that I had, in answer to your question, long-winded as it may be, is I worked on the supply chain side. Okay, I worked for a company called Sara Lee that owned brands I ran, Hillshire Farm and Jimmy Dean. I mean, I had breakfast this morning at a restaurant and ordered a sausage patty that came from someplace. So the supply chain is everything from the farmer or the rancher, okay, to the processor, to the packager, to the distributor, until it even gets to the restaurant. So spent a lot of time on the supply side of the business, and became one of my 17 passions.
I would imagine dealing with that side of the industry, you recognize that there are some things with leadership and culture that just transcend any industry. Good culture creates good kind of a work situation, creates good output, leadership. Tell me some of the things that you learned from some of the best leaders you worked with throughout all those times.
Boy, we certainly don't have time for that, but I'll give you some of them, all right? But I'm not going to limit it to the food industry, but I'll start off with the food industry. When I left corporate America and became the lead consultant globally for business development for Coca-Cola, learned a lot of the Coca-Cola mantra. Okay, well, there was a guy named Robert Woodruff. Robert Woodruff was considered one of the modern day founders of Coca-Cola. Okay, and he was an amazing, you talk about amazing leader, but he said something I've never forgotten. Okay, I didn't hear him say it. He was long gone, but it was all about a true leader. Okay, is one that never takes credit. A true leader is one that knows how, whether he did it or not. So to me, one leadership factor to me was the idea that my people need to shine. Now you hear great coaches getting interviewed after a Super Bowl or a World Series, and they don't talk about themselves. It is about their people. So it's really about spreading the leadership. I would also tell you, give you an example. My wife and I just recently came back from a vacation in Montana, and we were the guests at the Flying D Ranch. Ted Turner's an old friend. Ted Turner is certainly a leader, the creator of cable television. CNN owned the Braves, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. One of the things I learned from Ted Turner was to respect and honor a man named Socrates. And that may sound strange. Socrates was a philosopher, but Ted shared with me, and I learned from Ted, that Socrates never lectured. He only questioned. And he talked about the important art of questioning. Great leaders question people to engage them, needless to say, to engage them. I spent some time traveling with General Colin Powell, an amazing human being, again, an amazing leader. This General Powell, because rest in peace, passed on, when he would sit with someone, he would ask them 20 questions. So tell me where you're from, and tell me about your kids, and where'd you go to college? He made you feel how important you were just by asking questions. Okay. In terms of that, I didn't meet this lady. Okay. But I am involved with the family and working with Robin Robinson, making a movie on her life, but her name was Pat Summitt, legendary basketball coach. As a result of being part of that movement to take her life story in a movie, my wife, Kim, and I became experts in Pat Summitt. Pat Summitt said something, talk about leader. Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So in answer to your question, it's about caring. It's about listening. It's about spreading the wealth and letting other people take the credit. Okay. But I will give you one baseball, since I know you're a baseball fan. Tommy Lasorda was a dear friend. Miss him very, very much. Tommy Lasorda once told me the key to leadership and the key to management, okay, is to this is about his players now, take the players that hate you and keep them away from those who are undecided. I thought that was, I thought that was brilliant. It was brilliant.
That sounds like Tommy Lasorda. That's incredible. Well, I have a feeling that you have got quite a long list of people that you've worked with and met over the years. Goodness, Colin Powell, Ted Turner, Tommy Lasorda. It's all over the map. Tell me a few others that you, we got time for this. You got some other nuggets out there that you haven't shared yet.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you one of the most important people I've ever met in my life. He's sitting right next to me. No, I'm serious. Okay. I love him like a brother, like a son, like a father. You're a minister too, I believe, right? Mike Lynch has been the most amazing coach in my life. And I know we'll talk about this later, but the quote that I've always used that Mike shared with me, and he's the epitome of it, is a good coach can change a game. A great coach can change a life. And Mike's got a fingerprint on my heart. So I can sit around and talk about leaders all you want. I've met with Lech Walesa. I've opened for Henry Kissinger, both Bushes, okay, from Mikhail Gorbachev to you name it. I've met them all, and they're all wonderful people. But the one that meant probably the most in my life was the guy sitting next to me. So I'll get back to the celebrity cast, okay? But he's my celebrity. By the way, I got to tell you a great story. Your listeners will love this story, all right? Mike Lynch story, my minister, Mike Lynch. I invite Mike and his wife to come join my wife and I in California, in Los Angeles, okay, at an event. I'm part of I founded a group with Steven Tyler from Aerosmith, and I'll tell you about that. And it's called Janie's Fund, and it's about raising money for at-risk, abused, and neglected girls. So we invited the Lynches, Mike Lynch and his dear bride, to California, to a Grammy party. People died to be invited to the Grammys. So the Lynches come, and we were going to come in on different planes. So I gave Mike a list of places he ought to go see in LA. This is really the first time going to LA, and, discover this, discover that, right? Okay, I'm going to be a good tour guide. I see Mike later that night, and I say, okay, so tell me about your day. I gave him a roadmap of sightseeing, and his dear wife, Ann, said, well, We didn't go to any of the places you put on the list, Ira. I said, well, what'd you do? Well, we rented a car, left LAX, drove up to Pepperdine University so Mike could watch baseball practice.
It's true, Rusty. It's true.
First of all, that doesn't surprise me a bit. And second of all, Pepperdine is worth seeing.
Oh, yes.
It is.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
It is, but there's probably a couple of things you could have seen. So yeah, I mean, I can probably, jump over industry after industry. I was blessed, to build a relationship with a iconic rock star named Steven Tyler. Steven wrote a song years ago called Janie's Got a Gun.
Uh-huh.
Dismal song, dismal subject. Just felt guilty about it. Wanted to do something for young women, abused women. So my wife, Kim, and I, and one or two others put together a concept called Janie's Fund.
Uh-huh.
And we've raised almost $35 million for at-risk abused and neglected girls.
Wow.
I'll stay in the rock world for a second, if that's okay with you.
Mm-hmm.
There's a dear friend of mine named Alice Cooper.
My name is Wayne, and this is Garth.
Nice to meet you guys.
So, do you come to Milwaukee often?
Well, I'm a regular visitor here, but Milwaukee has certainly had its share of visitors. The French missionaries and explorers were coming here as early as the late 1600s to trade with the Native Americans.
In fact, isn't Milwaukee an Indian name?
Yes, Pete, it is. Actually, it's pronounced Miliwake, which is Algonquin for the good land.
I was not aware of that.
Who, by the way, should be on your show. And if you ask me to set it up, I could do that. I was trying to get it from Mike, too. Yep. Alice Cooper is a devout Christian.
He is. I would love to interview him. So I'll take you up on that, Ira.
Yeah, he's also been married 46 years to beautiful Cheryl. And the reason I say that is that rock stars don't stay married 46 years. Right. And he's also a scratch golfer, But, Alice and I are grandparents, and Alice and I have been working on a project called Rock the Grandkids, where we're working on taking people like, Paul McCartney and other legendary James Taylor, Carole King, and putting together an album of these iconic singers from our generation singing "The Wheels on the Bus Go Round and Round." and Alice, by the way, is Itsy Bitsy Spider. Okay. I see, to me, my father once said, if you have a choice in life of being good or being lucky, take lucky. So give you a couple more. I go to college, University of Maryland. I join a fraternity. And my pledge master is this guy who thinks he's funny. He thinks he's funny, but I don't think he's funny. Okay. But he was my pledge master nonetheless. I had to respect him. Left college after 15 years of stand-up comedy. He made it pretty big. His name is Larry David. He's worth about $800 million now.
He did all right.
Created Seinfeld and Curb Your Enthusiasm. Okay. He, that was the Larry David part. Well, I was raised in a little town called Oceanside, New York. Well, there was a young man who was kind of manager of the football team and also the radio broadcaster for sport. He wasn't an athlete, great supporter, did a lot of stuff. He was a few years younger than I. And he grew up, and I was trying to find him for a high school reunion. And someone said, I think Bobby works for ABC. Well, I eventually found him, Bobby Iger.
Oh, my.
Bob Iger, chairman of ABC, ESPN, and, ABC. So that was all luck. I was on an airplane and sat next to Zsa Zsa Gabor and became her writer. When I was going to college, I was flying down to college, and sitting next to me was a very, very beautiful lady. Okay, who was telling me she was launching her new magazine named Ms. Magazine. Her name was Gloria Steinem. I sat on an airplane, the Easter shuttle, going from LaGuardia Airport to Boston, with a guy that I didn't really recognize. He was Secretary of State. He was Attorney General, and I had a lacrosse stick. And Bobby Kennedy, not the new Bobby Kennedy, the old Bobby Kennedy, told me about his day playing lacrosse. So I've been blessed, and I only have one person to thank, or one entity to thank, and that's God. So I could go on and on, from Jacques Cousteau to you name it. My wife and I have been blessed to, but you know what? They're all just real people, and you almost want to shake someone and say, do you know who you are?
Right.
Well,
tell me about how you met Jesus, because I know that you were raised Jewish. What was that journey like?
Well, if I may, okay, I think, as a coach, and I still coach, I put a lot of value on assists more than goals. So I would ask that if you wouldn't mind, if Mike Linch would start that response, okay, because he was with me on the journey, and I'll fill in some of the remarks here, but if you don't mind,
I'd love that.
Yeah. So I would say this, Rusty, it was a journey. Journey's the right word for that, because it was not an instantaneous movement for Ira. We had coached against each other for years, and you had a son that was attending North Star. And that was the first part. Wasn't that how the journey began for you, coming to North Star, Ira?
Well, it was. And North Star, are you okay? I don't know if you ever had anyone do CPR on the podcast, but I'm ready.
That would be a first.
I'm certified. North Star at the time was being promoted. It was it was at North Cobb High School. You had no building, as a church for the unchurched. Well, being raised Jewish, that sounded like that was a place for me, because in terms of that. But I don't know if you want to continue. Or should I jump into it? Or
no, you're good.
Okay. Let me back it up to the real reason. Okay. We're in London, and that's Big Ben. Okay. Big Ben is going on. Ask you a question, Russ. Did you ever have a party at your house?
Sure.
Open house or something? Okay. Someone brings flowers, a vase, candle, bottle of wine. I mean, that happens typically when you go visit someone, right? Well, at the end of a party, if you still go over all the gifts you got, there's a bottle of wine or a candle or something with no tag on it. So you know that one of your neighbors brought it, but you didn't know who to thank. And we've all gone through that. Well, I woke up one day after lunch with Mike for 20 years, talking about spirituality. And I looked at my blessed parents. I looked at my brother, how wonderful they were. I looked at the wife of wives. I mean, we all brag about our wives, but, I know mine's number one. But, an amazing human being, an amazing, caring, sensitive, intuitive, smart human being. Then I looked at my kids and realized, my goodness, how blessed am I? Now I'm looking at my grandkids. I look at my career. I look at my friends. I look at my relationships. I look to, where I've been and what I've done and what I've experienced. And I realized, wait a minute, this is some present. This is one bucket, bowl, basket, box of presents with no label on it. And I know I didn't do it myself. All right. Somebody, somewhere, some being said, I'm going to, here's Kim, you guys ought to be together. I mean, it was given to me and I didn't have a tag on it and I didn't know who to thank. No different than frustrating saying, gee whiz, one of our neighbors gave us something. Who do we go to thank? Because I didn't know God. I didn't know who Jesus was. I didn't know who Muhammad was. I didn't know God, didn't know God. And I realized it was a gap in my heart, in my head, in my life, in my soul, in my being, in my essence. It was a hole. And I had to figure out a way to fill it. And that started the journey. It was not a journey to find Jesus. It was a journey to find, what is this thing called God? What is this thing called spiritual religion? And I was raised in a Jewish environment. I was raised in a Jewish family, but it was a cultural Jewish family.
Yeah.
Loved the food, loved the music, loved the humor,
love Neil Diamond,
Hey, I'd love to see someone stomp the glass, at the wedding. And then I realized that, wait a minute now, there's got to be more, because I looked around me and I saw people that really, and I'd go to North Star and all of a sudden I'd see in the middle of a prayer or something, someone would raise their hand and I could see in their face, they got it. And I didn't. And it forced me to go on a journey and young athlete going on a journey, trying to figure out a way to round the bases. And, Coach Lynch, who, I knew as a baseball coach as well as a minister, and I will tell you that I think if you look at the record, I beat him more than he beat me. And I could never understand that because he worked for God. I figured working for God would certainly get a runner from third to home. I don't get that.
That's right. That's right. And it was though, Rusty, it was a journey. And when a successful person knows there's a hole, he felt the hole. And helping, you almost felt helpless at times because this, you can point someone the right direction, but getting them there is a process they have to go on themselves. And, and I don't know how many times Ira and I would get there and we would sort of start back at the same place and end. And he knew what he wanted, but getting to what he wanted, I knew was just going to take some time. But I will give Ira credit. The hard part for a guy like this, worldly, they're very successful, but they're great dad. And he's probably as good a dad as I knew. Phenomenal husband. So all those things he had in order, but there was just that gap and that peace that was causing a lack of peace for him. And so it was I would say almost 20 plus years on that journey.
It was. I'm obviously a slow learner, but it took me 7 years to get out of college too. So, it's a pattern. But there's also other things that go to add on to what Mike said. There's also a fear of change. Now, you got to understand though, I'm a guy that probably gave 65% of all the speeches I've ever given on change. Change is inevitable. Growth is optional, and I can go on. So here I am teaching and hopefully inspiring people to deal with change. And I can't grasp with it because I was raised Jewish. This is what I knew. I knew a star. I didn't know a cross. I didn't know any of that. And, I would say Jesus a lot. Every time I hit my finger with a hammer, I'd say, Jesus, maybe that was a prayer. I don't know. It was an early prayer. But but then also too, there was also baggage, not bad baggage, but baggage. I'd been married previously, although Kim and I have been together 43 years. I had a starter wife, right? But I had 2 children that were raised Jewish, pretty serious Jewish. My brother was Jewish. My best friend was Jewish. It was, it was kind of like, living in Atlanta and saying, I'm no longer a Braves fan. I'm going to root for the Reds or something. Yep. There's a lot of baggage there, but also too, it was a journey. And for me, it took 20 years. For some people, it might take 20 minutes, but it was that important. Spirituality, God, is that important in the life. So what I did was, through the help of Mike, I read books, The Case for Christianity, but I read The Case for Judaism. I studied the executive summary of the Book of Mormon, the Koran, Baha'i, went to Jews for Jesus class, spoke to and then I started meeting with people that I respected, Dan Cathy, chairman of Chick-fil-A, and others, Mike, and I mean, but the more I thought about it, the more confused I became. And then I started becoming even more confused. I said, wait a minute now. If you don't believe in Jesus Christ, accept Jesus Christ, your Lord and Savior, you're not going to go to heaven. Okay, top line, So, Jonas Salk was a Jew. He cured polio. So what is he going to be left behind? I was raised in a town called Oceanside, right on the side of the ocean in Long Island. I mean, I know the ocean. Couldn't come to grips with the fact that it split and the good guys went in and then the bad guys were I mean, there was a lot of questions, but I kept on thinking and studying, and my brain was hurt. And that's when Mike Linch started talking about this. Why don't you share a little about going from here to here?
Yeah, well, it was a paralysis by analysis. You've watched it a million times, Rusty, that somebody is thinking, then they're overthinking. Now they're confused. I was getting confused. And, and that was the process that Ira was in. And, we just began to talk about there's just some things that faith has to fill in the gaps for that I can't answer everything. And that there's a heart piece of this that you have to get to the part of being where your heart knows it needs to be. And that's where the phrase, the rundown, came in. We were leaving lunch at a local restaurant here, and I just remember looking at Ira saying, man, listen, you're in a rundown between third and home. And at some point, you've got to decide which way you're going to go. You're going to go back to third, to the roots or are you going to come home? And that's a decision only you can make. I can never make that decision for you. And we parted ways at lunch, and I didn't know if there'd be a follow-up lunch after that. And the next call I got was from Ira. And basically you said what, Ira, when you called me that day?
Well, the context is, if you know anything about a rundown, kids get tagged out because their legs get tired.
That's right.
I called Mike up and I said, my legs are tired. I can't run anymore. I've made my decision. And, Mike always tells a story about, I'll come over right now. Okay. And I'm a
close the deal, Rusty. You got to close the deal.
ABC.
Yeah, that's right. I'm a family guy. And I said, I want to wait till tomorrow. We're kind of celebrating an early Father's Day. And I really want to do this in front of my kids. And of course, Anne, Mike's wonderful, beautiful, amazing wife, said, Mike, I'm worried. If you wait till tomorrow, he might change his mind. But Mike came over to the house. Look, as athletes, whether you're a little league athlete, a high school athlete, a college athlete, somewhere along the line, someone gave you a game ball, even if they gave you a game ball for being the best sub on the team, And Mike gave me the greatest trophy I've ever received. It was not a loving cup and it was not a plaque. Okay. It was a game ball that Mike inspired and went out and presented. And the game ball said, biggest win of career.
Wow.
That was the day I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. And I'm emotional about it. I received a game ball for scoring the winning goal in a national championship game. I don't even know where it is. But the baseball that signified my accepting Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior is right smack dab in the family room in front of everyone to see, because that's how important it was. And by the way, as a writer, you look for metaphors and phrases. When Mike said to me, God's got you in a rundown between third and home, that's the most amazing metaphor ever. Because as you know, if you're in a rundown, you want to be safe. Yep. If you got a choice of being safe at third or home, you take home. And home is not only where one is safe, but for me, it was where one is saved.
That's amazing. Mike, I want to hear from you on this 20-year wait. Because there's some listeners out there that they've been trying to help a family member take that choice to run home, and it's been years. What were some of your prayers during that time? I mean, obviously you loved Ira, you weren't going to give up, but how did you pray during that long waiting season?
I just pray, it's a great question, Rusty, because I think we all have those friendships and we all have those family members that it just seems like, I just don't think it's going to happen. I just, after X amount of years, you're like, well, I think he is going to die with questions. You're at that point of going, I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but my job isn't to cause that to happen. My job is to give him the grace that he needs and the long, the phrase long suffering, that perseverance that regardless of whether you do or don't, doesn't change that you're going to be your friend. And I'm going to keep praying that the Lord brings your heart to his heart. And that was my prayer, is that God would just capture Ira's heart, because he had all the head knowledge by this point, but that old heart was just lagging behind. And what helped this is he has a wife that loves the Lord. He's got boys that love the Lord, and he was seeing it. So it wasn't just me. He saw it in Dan Cathy and Ike Reichert and Wynn Davis, a great friend of his who's a pastor up north. And man, so Ira, it wasn't the Mike Linch show. It was, he is beginning to see this fingerprint, and as Ira calls them, God winks, a lot of places. And I just got to I just got to be in the third base box to wave him home. My role was no different than anybody else's because we were all praying for that day for Ira.
That's so good. You're right. I mean, it really is such a team approach. I mean, the Apostle Paul tells us that, but I love the metaphor you guys have come up with here with baseball. That's such a brilliant idea. Tell us about the book that you guys have written together.
Yeah. Well, we talked long and hard about it, and and I want to make it clear, and Mike, I'm sure Mike agrees with it. It wasn't a book to be written so that we have enterprise. Let's create a T-shirt and sell it. I felt that it was not felt. I honestly knew it was my role and responsibility from the readings that I started looking at from Principles of Christianity, that part of my role was to do unto others or expand it, send it out. I mean, I remember, a couple of weeks after I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, Dan Cathy called me. Okay. I may have told you a story, like 1 a.m. Are you awake? And I said, yeah, well, it's 1 a.m. I'm sleeping, that kind of thing. He said, well, I have a young man that I'm working with who was raised Jewish, who's going through the same thing. And, would you mind spending some time with him? And I did. And that call started coming in from others. And I realized if I could figure out a way to help someone else that maybe has gone through what I went through, that would be a blessing. Wasn't looking for scale, wasn't saying, gee, let's go out and say, and help 1,000 people. It could be one. It's step by step. So we thought the story needed to be told from an educational standpoint, maybe even an inspirational standpoint. And we decided the common love for baseball. Okay, let's use the metaphor of baseball, first base, second base, third base, and home, and what you needed to go there. So we put our heads together, and the form of the book is it's first person, third person. And what I mean by that is Ira tells his story about growing up Jewish or growing up and being a high school kid, whatever it is. And then at the end of that's the first person. Then Mike comes in as the coach. And then Mike comments on it by saying, what Ira's going through, everyone went through, da, 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 da. So it became a first person, third person. And, so it was not two people sitting together saying, let's write a chapter. And what's really interesting for me is I really enjoyed seeing Mike's take on it all. I knew what my story was, and I'll say this in all candor because, didn't mom once say honesty is the best policy? I started realizing that around me, surrounding me, were lots of wonderful people, but the world of Jewish kids when I was growing up, they were not athletes. They just weren't, and someone may turn around and cancel my culture, but that's okay. It'll sell more books, but the kids that I grew up with they played golf, they played tennis. At one point, I was one of 3 football players on my team that was Jewish because that wasn't the cultural, background. And I started realizing that maybe some of the things I did was to become, respected for being strong, not just. And it was really kind of an interesting journey that I went through. But Mike would then, respond to that a little bit. I was nicknamed Irish when I was a kid. So I used to go by the name Irish Blumenthal as a joke, because there was something lacking, though. There was something missing that I really, really needed to come to grips. I don't know if that makes any sense, but made me feel good, in terms of that. But it was a journey. It was an absolute journey.
And it answers that question, Rusty, that you asked earlier. What do you do to help somebody? The whole book's that. So it's the book as the journey went at each stage. At each stage, what my perspective of watching Ira run the bases and what it took to just get to third base. It took a while to get to third base. Well, we were over on first for a long time.
We were, but it's an interesting. It's not complex. I made it complex. Okay, as a teacher, as a writer, as a speaker, as a businessman. Okay, as a coach. I'd turn around and I would make statements to parents. I would take an average player with a great heart over a great player with no heart any day of the week, day of the week. So here I am preaching in my own way. I'd turn around to, salespeople that work for me and I'd criticize them for not having a heart, not having energy, not being passionate. And I'd turn around and I'd attribute great success to people who are passionate. But yet in my own mind, I didn't have that passion. And then when I got that passion, I wasn't doing anything more than what I've always believed in. I mean, I'm passionate about being a believer. Passionate about it. It's not just I joined a club and I get a jacket. And I think that was a great lesson to be learned, you know. And I think today, people that are struggling have to figure out that passion, you know, whether it's, do I play baseball or lacrosse, or whether I'm Christian or Jewish, or whether I go to, you know, University of Georgia, or I go to a community. I mean, if you don't do it because of passion, it's never going to work out right. Make sense?
Absolutely. Tell us the name of the book and how people can find it.
Give me a call. I'll send you one. Well, you know, yeah, obviously, you know, Amazon, you know, is usually the simplest way to go. Mike and I both have some, you know, my Instagram is at Ira J, not for Jesus, but it's probably a good way to remember it. But at Ira J Blumenthal, Ira Blumenthal is my LinkedIn. My company, I'm a speaker, so my company is Ira Speak. You know, they can certainly go to Ira Speak, the website, and go from there. Mike, how about yourself?
Yeah. So the easiest way definitely is Amazon, and I can be found at mikelinch.com and pretty much on any social media platform. So books are really easy to get, and it is a great resource if you got friends that are struggling, especially men that are struggling. I remember Rusty during this process calling my old baseball coach, Bobby Richardson, and telling him Ira was a big New York Yankee fan, and telling him about Ira's journey. And I remember Coach Richardson lived in Sumter, South Carolina at the time, and he goes, Mike, I will get in my car tonight to drive down and share Jesus with him. And that was how passionate, you know, Coach Richardson was to see him come home to be with the Lord. And so it's a neat journey. And man, that book will be a great resource for a lot of people who are struggling on that journey as well.
Mike, I don't know if you know this or not, but there's actually a book on Amazon called The Curious Case of Mike Lynch.
Really?
Yeah, I just Googled it, and it's Lynch.
It's the bad side of the family.
It must be. It's the improbable life and death of a tech billionaire. So I know this.
Oh, yeah. Well, definitely the wrong side of the family.
Yeah.
And then take credit.
Exactly. Hey, tell me the name of the book again so everybody gets it right.
Rundown.
Just simply called Rundown.
It's just the word rundown. Safe at home. Okay. And we're real excited about it. But, you know, it's interesting. If I'm not mistaken, I think this was really your first book. Or is it first, second?
It's the second one, but yeah.
The second was the one was just The Curious Case.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. This was a catharsis. I mean, this book to me was taking a weight off my chest because, you know, I told my story. I tried to be very sensitive, you know, not to step on anyone's toes or hurt any feelings, you know, because, you know, I love the folks around me. You know, I'll add something that's kind of interesting, if you don't mind. Sitting down with my brother, my dear brother, or sitting with my daughters and telling them my decision was not the easiest. It was probably the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. It was confusing. It was disconcerting to them. It was, you know, why are you leaving us? You know, whatever the case may be. But my dear brother said something interesting after it finally sunk in. You know, we all like to be liked. We all like to be appreciated. We all like to be respected. And even as it's silly, I turned to my brother after one of these serious conversations, and I said, well, you know, little brother, I hope you still can find in your heart to have some love for me. And he said something that was really interesting. He said, Ira, I've always loved you as my brother. I never loved you as my Jewish brother. Because it kind of transcended that. And that was a very important, you know, moment in my head. So as Mike said too, if one human being can pick this book up and get something out of it and can help their life, then the book is successful.
It's amazing. The book is Rundown, Safe at Home by Ira Blumenthal and Pastor Mike Linch. It's on Amazon right now for $15.99. But call today and we're going to throw in a copy of, I'm kidding, Mike Lynch's first book. Listen, guys, this has been a real treat. Ira, I'm going to hold you to that Alice Cooper interview. And if you know James Taylor, I'll take that one too. So
I don't, but if you can get me James Taylor, I'll get you. We'll trade a James Taylor fella. You know, the crazy. We're not recording it, are we?
We are, but we can cut it.
Okay, that's okay. Everyone can hear it. I love Alice Cooper. He's a wonderful human being. His wife Cheryl is just magic. Okay. Even though I've known him as a friend for years, I only know one of his songs, and that's "School's Out." Other than that,
I think that's all anybody really knows, to be honest.
James Taylor, I can give you a bunch from Carolina, my mind to You've Got a Friend. But what I'll do is I will send a note. Okay, I know he's on tour actually.
Oh my.
He's in Europe. The guy is, I want to say he's 76. He's doing 140 gigs again this year. It's crazy. But no, what I'll do is I'll send a note, an email, okay, to Cheryl, his wife, introducing you, and then you guys can take it from there.
That would be amazing. I'll have to look up his discography to make sure I'm brushed up on his other songs besides "School's Out."
Yeah, I think he has another song called "I'm 17" or "I'm 16" or something.
Probably, yeah, that sounds about right. Okay, so I got to ask this because you're from Long Island and Jewish. Do you know Billy Joel?
No, but I've had an experience with Billy Joel, but I'm actually no longer Jewish, but that's okay.
Well, by heritage.
Yeah, that's right. Or didn't you hear this podcast? I don't think you were at the Must Ministries fundraiser where it was a rock and roll theme. Okay. Well, I'm now 17. No, I'm probably 18 years old. Yeah, I'm 18 years old. The drinking age in New York when I was a kid was 18. So when you turn 18, what do? You find someone with a car and you go to a bar like you really have any idea what to order, And I kind of remember I ordered a thing because I heard someone once have it called the slow gin fizz. God knows where that went. Okay. Now, so my brother and friends and I went to this bar, okay, and there was a big sign right out in front of the bar, okay, called the Buckboard Inn. I don't know why. I can remember the Buckboard Inn when I was 18 years old, but I can't tell you what I had for lunch yesterday. That's pretty amazing. At the Buckboard Inn, and there was a big sign out in front of the Buckboard Inn. Tonight featuring Billy and Joel. It didn't say Billy Joel. Okay, so go inside. I think I found a picture of this too. I might be able to send it to you. So I go inside, and there's one guy playing the piano. Now, he's probably 17, 18 years old. Can't be more than 19. Okay. It was that, right? And he's wearing a shirt and it says Hicksville.
Yeah.
He went to Hicksville High School.
Yeah, that's right.
One of my enemies in, football and lacrosse. So the fact that he was wearing that, it gave me a chance to kind of, be the bad fan, and I kept on saying, "Hey, where's Joel?" I figured he was Billy because they call him Billy. It was obviously so. Long story short, I never met him, but I played the harmonica. So I learned how to play Piano Man on the harmonica.
Of course.
And at this fundraiser for Must Ministries, 700 people, I was the MC, and I got up and I said, "I'm now going to play a duet with Billy Joel." So we had a big video of Billy Joel, and I played the harmonica while he played the piano. So
that's great.
So he and I are,
You're very close.
We're very close.
That's great.
We lived in the same state.
That's so great. Well, listen, guys, I so appreciate this time. And Ira, thanks for sharing your life. Mike, thanks for sharing Ira. And just love getting to hear your story. So much success on the book.
Thank you, Rusty.
Well, thank you.
Well, once again, the book is called Rundown. It's on Amazon. It's listed under the name Ira Blumenthal. Pastor Mike Linch, L-I-N-C-H, is the secondary name, and it's a little hard to find if you just type in that name. So start with Ira or start with Rundown. But get a copy of that book and let that encourage you, and share it with a friend who might be going through spiritual questions at this time as well. Hey, it's been great to have you with us. We'll be back next week with brand new content. Have a great week, and as always, keep it simple.